Allow me to guide you through a complex network of connections and behaviors, as we delve deeper into the world of Asian street gangs and their influence on and by Western counterparts. The path before us is layered with history, culture, sociology, and the intricacies of the human condition. Let's journey together through the fascinating landscape that shapes these diverse gangs. The influence of culture and migration. In the crowded streets of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Orange County, waves of Asian immigrants have found a home. They came bearing traditions, languages, and cultures that shaped and were shaped by their surroundings. Their steps traced pathways that reached as far as Houston and New York, connecting them in an intricate web of relationships and rivalries. The journey of these immigrant families was marked by a struggle to preserve their cultural identity while adapting to an entirely new world. For the youth caught between two cultures, the process was often fraught with tension and misunderstandings. A longing for belonging led many towards the call of the street gangs, where they found acceptance and community. A mosaic of gangs. The Asian street gangs are not a monolithic entity, rather, they are a mosaic reflecting the diverse ethnicities from which they were born. The Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Indo-Chinese, and Pacific Islander gangs each carved out their own space, formed their own rules, and took up arms in unique ways. Unlike traditional Latino street gangs, many Asian gangs transcended geographic turf. These nomadic warriors roamed the cities, forging alliances and rivalries in a complex dance. Their non-turf-oriented nature made them enigmatic, flexible, and highly mobile. A gang member might wake up in Los Angeles only to find himself in Houston by nightfall, moving through an informal network stretching across continents. The unique characteristics. Asian street gangs possessed unique characteristics that set them apart from their Western counterparts. While initially targeting their own ethnic communities, their criminal activities evolved to become more sophisticated and organized. Youth as young as 13 or 14 were involved in intricately planned crimes, reflecting a level of maturity unseen in other street gangs. Though initially following a path different from their Occidental peers, the influence of Western street gang psychology gradually seeped into the Asian street gang culture. Behaviors such as graffiti, hand signs, drive-by shootings, and the like found resonance within these communities, creating a convergence of methods and styles. A two-way street. Interestingly, the influence was not a one-way street. Practices once thought to be exclusive to Asian street gangs, such as cigarette burning, made their way into Hispanic, skinhead, and African American gangs. The Asian street gangs also pioneered non-violent crimes like credit card and check fraud, identity theft, and counterfeiting, leveraging technology to plan and execute their activities. They used the internet to communicate, advertise their culture, and even plan criminal activities. In the heart of Los Angeles, the rapid patter of Korean mingled with the cacophonous sounds of the bustling city. The dawn of the Korean street gangs had taken root. Here, in the mid-1960s, began a tale filled with aspirations, desperation, unity, and betrayal. The fragrance of kimchi and the sound of K-pop couldn't mask the simmering tension hidden behind the bright neon signs. The formation, a brotherhood born. They were the outsiders, the immigrants. Children caught between two worlds, trying to grasp the American dream, but constantly reminded of their foreign origin. Strangers in their homes, speaking a language their parents couldn't comprehend. Bonds were forged in this isolation, leading to the creation of something new, something uniquely theirs, the Korean street gangs. The most prominent among these were the Korean Killers, American Burger, and Burger King. Far from the troubled stereotypes, many of these gang members came from affluent backgrounds. Well-educated and employed, they were driven not by destitution but by a need for belonging, empowerment, and protection. The rise, power and profit. By the late 60s and early 70s, the gangs had established themselves. They were no longer mere social clubs, they had become criminal enterprises. Residential robberies, auto thefts, and other crimes were the means to sustain a life that was both a rebellion against cultural norms and a twisted affirmation of their Korean identity. At the helm of this underworld was the Korean Killers. Organized, relentless, and secretive, they were the epitome of criminal sophistication. They conducted careful reconnaissance of their victims and executed their crimes with chilling efficiency. Women in the shadows, the Korean Girl Killers. The formation of the Korean Girl Killers was a response to the need for female participation and representation within this masculine domain. Much like their male counterparts, they too found empowerment in association and criminality. But their journey was fraught with deeper complexities, from cultural shame to sexual violence. Their existence served as a harsh mirror reflecting societal attitudes towards women. Crimes in silence, a community under siege. As the Korean gangs grew in power, they spread terror in their community. Crimes against persons, particularly sexual assaults, became rampant but were seldom reported. Fear, shame, and a general distrust in the legal system had created a barrier between the victims and justice. Intimidation by the gangs combined with cultural dynamics ensured a code of silence that allowed these crimes to continue unabated. This was a dark period, where even the walls bore witness to the gangs' dominance through their unique style of graffiti. Adaptation and concealment, a changing image. As time progressed, Korean gangs began to adopt the styles and symbols of other ethnic gangs, a fusion reflecting the melting pot of Los Angeles. They avoided overt gang attire but were not above using tattoos or other identifiers when necessary. This adaptability was emblematic of their resilience. They knew when to blend in and when to stand out. The dual life of being both academic achievers and hardened criminals was a testament to this ability to navigate different worlds. The present, a legacy continued. Today, Korean street gangs continue to evolve. Their methods, their motivations, and even their appearance may change, but the underlying narrative remains the same. A story of identity, survival, and a constant struggle to find a place in a world that seems determined to marginalize them. In the glitzy nightclubs and the shadowy billiard halls, in the silent tears of victims and the defiant graffiti on the walls, the story of the Korean street gangs continues to unfold. A complex web of cultural conflict, human frailty, and a relentless quest for power. The journey of the Korean street gangs in America is far from over, and their legacy continues to resonate in the community they both protect and terrorize. The questions they pose about identity, belonging, and morality are universal, reflecting the human condition in all its complexity. And as the city sleeps, the ghosts of the past mingle with the whispers of the present, keeping the story alive, waiting for the next chapter to be written. In the heart of Southern California, amidst the blending hues of vibrant cultures and a shimmering Pacific horizon, lay a thriving community, yet one touched by shadows that extended back to the islands of the Philippines. Here, in this place far from the archipelago's tropical warmth, the story of Filipino gangs wove itself into the intricate fabric of the immigrant experience. In the early days, the prison walls in the Philippines bore witness to the genesis of the Bahala Na and Sige Sige, a bond of brothers formed in confinement that would spread its roots to the streets. As young Filipino blood was recruited into the fold, the gangs took on a life of their own, their influence extending across oceans. When political unrest stirred the Philippines in the late 70s and early 80s, a wave of immigration swept Filipino families to the shores of California. And among the 1 million plus Filipinos who sought refuge, some carried with them the customs and traditions that gave birth to an underworld. They spoke 8 main languages, their voices a tapestry of 89 different dialects, and the diversity within their communities reflected the complexity of their homeland. Yet, the culture shock of their new world and the tensions that arose from blending old traditions with new surroundings led some, especially the youth, down a path less traveled. The system of Barkada, a social grouping system, became both a means of survival and a foundation for a new wave of street gangs in America. Groups of 10 or 20 young Filipinos, united by names and nicknames, began to form bonds that transcended mere friendship. From the camaraderie came the birth of new gangs like Satanas, Pinoy Real, Red Dragons, and the Trupang Hudas. These gangs had their unique characteristics, distinct from their Mexican and black counterparts. They were territorial but not brawlers over turf, they chose meeting places and even changed them to avoid police confrontations. Yet, they were not shy to embrace the lifestyle modeled by others. Fashionable in appearance, they wore baggy pants, oversized shirts, and sometimes even black trench coats. Some even scarred themselves, using cigarettes or red-hot quarters, a badge of their hardcore mentality. The Filipino household was a paradox, where siblings might belong to rival gangs, but this diversity didn't cause conflict within the home. It was a reflection of a unique cultural acceptance that allowed different cliques within the parent gang to operate independently. In the shadowed corners of Southern California, Filipino gang graffiti marked their territories. Sometimes they used the names of fantasy figures like Aladdin or Sinbad, reflecting a romanticized connection to tales of adventure and rebellion. Their initiation rituals were brutal, sometimes involving stabbing, and they carried with them a myth that death was the only way out of the gang, a myth that was often debunked. They tattooed themselves with symbols of their gang, their family, their identity. And yet, despite their fierce allegiance, they often kept close connections to their tightly knit families, sometimes even hiding from the police with the aid of their relatives. The family was the refuge, the home where they could escape to the islands if need be. Crime was their game, and they played it within their community, preying on their own, committing acts of extortion, auto theft, and drive-by shootings. Their weapons were various, but their mentality was universal. We may be small, but a cult equalizes everything. In a world where life seemed transient, many Filipino gang members held a belief that life had little meaning, that it was even honorable to die for the gang. It was a philosophy rooted perhaps in their cultural understanding of death as a passage, not an end. But as they lived and died by this code, one question lingered: was the honor, respect, and memory they sought within the gang truly eternal, or was it just a fleeting illusion? The streets whispered their names, the echoes of their deeds resonating through the corners and alleys of a land far from where their journey began. In the clash of cultures and the struggle for identity, they carved a place for themselves, a chapter in the continuous saga of human complexity. In the end, the story of Filipino gangs in America is more than a tale of crime. It's a portrait of a community grappling with its roots, its dreams, and its demons. In the sprawling neighborhoods of California, where cultures intertwine and streets teem with diverse faces, the rise of Samoan street gangs has left an indelible mark. These gangs, influenced by traditional Latino street gang characteristics and aligned with the prominent African American gangs, were unlike any other in the way they operated. In the beginning, the first Samoan settlers were merely expatriates in Hawaii and California. The 1970s were a peaceful time, but soon, the youth were drawn into the world of gang warfare. The winds of change carried the echoes of a growing cultural storm, where the blood of brotherhood was about to be spilled. The Samoan street gangs adopted styles and insignias that distinguished them. They wore the badges of affiliation proudly, forging alliances with the notorious Crips or Bloods. The khaki baggy pants, the Pendletons, and the white sleeveless t-shirts became symbols of their unity and strength. The affiliations were not only about appearance, they were about allegiance and identity. The Samoans, driven by an inherent tribal culture, created their own sets. Blood or Crip, the choice was clear, and the rivalry was as bitter as any that had come before. Graffiti became the art of communication, a way to mark territory and proclaim loyalty. Blue for Crips and red for Bloods, the walls and personal belongings became canvases of defiance and pride. Insulting terms were drawn like battle lines, sending a clear message to rivals. The way these gangs claimed territory was unique, transient, not bound to neighborhoods but specific locations. Parks, schools, or meeting places, their turf was marked but not fiercely defended as traditional Hispanic gangs would. The identity of Samoan gangs was also shaped by the influence of African American gangs. Nicknames and monikers were adopted, following the patterns that spoke of their affiliation. These gangs were no mere imitation, they were a fusion of cultures and races. Whites, African Americans, Latinos, and even females found association within their ranks. As the 1980s and 1990s unfolded, the Samoan gangs earned a reputation for their auto theft abilities and willingness to commit violent acts. Names like Royal Samoan Posse, Sons of Samoa, and Crook City Bloods resonated on the streets. Their affiliation with the Crips added a layer of ruthlessness to their reputation. Fear and respect were commanded through association, and the name of the gang became synonymous with violence. Tattoos inked the words Cuz or Crip on their skin, an unspoken pledge to their chosen affiliation. Despite their reputation, most Samoan street gang members maintained sociability and family orientation. They were family, friends, and fierce warriors, bound by the unbreakable threads of loyalty and tradition.
The story of Samoan street gangs is a complex tapestry of cultural fusion, loyalty, rivalry, and adaptation. Their existence stands as a testament to how cultures intertwine, influence each other, and create new forms of identity. It's a story that continues to evolve, reflecting the ever-changing landscape of urban America. Vietnam, the land of rolling hills and turbulent history, is a country that has been shaped by conquests, colonization, and cultural fusion. Its story is one of resilience and transformation, but it's also the story of a people whose diaspora has led to the birth of Indo-Chinese street gangs in the United States. Imagine a time in Vietnam when French colonial powers ruled the land. The language was infused with French flavors, and the educational system bore the mark of Western influence. Coastal towns buzzed with activity, and villages clung to traditions that had endured for thousands of years. Religion was a diverse and colorful tapestry, with Buddhism mingling with Catholicism, Taoism, and other faiths. This religious diversity was not just a spiritual matter, it shaped the very fabric of Vietnamese society. It added depth and complexity to the culture but also sowed the seeds of a cultural shock for those who would later become immigrants and refugees. Family was, and still is, the core of Vietnamese life. Unlike the fleeting relationships of modern urban societies, the Vietnamese family bond was unbreakable. Villages were like large extended families, and when the shift to larger cities began, this family-centered mentality continued. Even in the United States, this pattern prevailed, with family members choosing to live within close proximity of each other. However, not all was idyllic in Vietnam. Corruption, especially during the time of the U.S. conflict, gnawed at the trust between government officials and the people. The police, tainted by bribery and unethical behavior, became a symbol of fear. Family members could disappear without a trace, and the justice system was often anything but just. It was against this backdrop that the first waves of Indo-Chinese immigrants began to arrive in the United States. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 opened doors, and soon, educated and wealthy Southeast Asians found a new home in the land of opportunity. But with opportunity also came challenges. The immigrants carried with them the scars of their homeland's turbulent history. The cultural shock, the unspoken fear of authority, the strong family bonds, and the religious diversity all shaped their experience in the United States. It is in this context that the Indo-Chinese street gangs began to form. The gangs were not just a product of urban decay or poverty, they were a manifestation of a complex history that spanned continents and centuries. These gangs were the echoes of Vietnam's villages, the shadows of French colonization, and the whispers of a time when corruption and fear were a part of daily life. They were the children of a tradition that valued family above all else but had also seen the dark side of human nature. The Indo-Chinese street gangs of the United States are not merely a criminal phenomenon, they are a cultural phenomenon. They are a reminder that the past is never truly gone, and the forces that shape a nation can continue to reverberate across oceans and generations. In the crowded streets of American cities, the echoes of Vietnam's history continue to resonate, painting a picture that is both complex and compelling. The relocation, a saga of movement, desperation, and adaptation, is one of the most striking chapters in the tale of Indo-Chinese gangs in America. It is a multifaceted story that is tied to 4 distinct waves of refugees, each with unique characteristics, motivations, and tragedies. Imagine the bustling streets of Saigon, now filled with uncertainty and chaos. The city has fallen, and a new era is dawning. With the first wave, the high-ranking military officials and middle-class professionals make their way to the shores of the United States, clutching the remnants of their old lives. Educated and with English at their disposal, their integration is relatively smooth, yet not without longing for their homeland. Then comes the second wave, the boat people, a name that carries the weight of a tragic journey. These men, women, and children, hailing from the rural and coastal areas of Vietnam, take to the sea in overcrowded vessels, their hearts filled with hope. But the seas are treacherous, and the Thai pirates are merciless. Rape, pillage, torture, and death become a nightmarish reality. Upon arrival in America, they are scarred, and their welcome is that of confusion and bureaucracy, lacking legal papers or the comforting embrace of family. The third wave, born of the Amerasian Homecoming Act, sees a new generation arrive on American soil. The Amerasian children, offspring of Vietnamese mothers and American GI fathers, are welcomed into the United States. Their presence is a tangible reminder of the complex entanglements between East and West, love and war. The fourth wave, arriving in the early 90s, consists mainly of political prisoners and their families. Their arrival is a result of an agreement with the Hanoi government, and by 1995, officials believe that over 100,000 additional refugees have found their way to the land of the free. These four waves, carrying with them the Vietnamese, ethnic Chinese born in Vietnam, Cambodians, the Hmong, and Laotian, find their new home in various parts of the United States, predominantly in Southern California. Their cultures, traditions, and histories mingle, creating a unique tapestry of Indo-Chinese American life. But in this new land, new challenges arise. Young refugees, caught between two worlds, find solace and identity in the formation of Southeast Asian street gangs. Initially, these gangs are formed based on ethnic origins, a way to cling to the familiar amidst the foreign. But as time passes, the barriers begin to break down, and the American gang culture takes root. The relocation is not merely a story of movement, it's a story of transformation. It's about the resilience of human spirit, the longing for connection, and the complex interplay between cultural preservation and assimilation. It's about the birth of a new identity, one that carries with it the echoes of Southeast Asia but is also shaped by the American experience. The street gangs that emerge are not merely a problem to be solved, they are a reflection of a journey that has been marked by tragedy, triumph, and the never-ending search for a place to call home. The birth of the Southeast Asian street gangs, specifically Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Laotian gangs, was not an abrupt event, but rather a gradual emergence marked by a confluence of historical, cultural, and social factors. With roots tracing back to the fall of Saigon and the atrocities faced in their native lands, these gangs found footing in California around 1978. They began as groups of disillusioned youth seeking protection, companionship, and a means of survival. These needs were all too real in a foreign land, as many of these youths were left homeless and disconnected. In their desperate attempt to secure their basic needs, they gradually turned towards criminal activities, which marked the inception of the street gangs we know today. Though initially without names and organization, these groups grew in association, bonding together through shared experiences, goals, and increasingly dangerous criminal undertakings. The scars of war, the brutalities faced in refugee camps, and the utter annihilation of families back home had made violence a familiar tool, a learned behavior. What sets Southeast Asian gangs apart is their ability to balance a life of crime with academics and family responsibilities. This double life, a blend of criminal daring and educational excellence, reflects the complex nature of these gangs. Members were often drawn from educated backgrounds and affluent areas, challenging the stereotypes of what a gang member should look like. Membership within these gangs was layered, often based on extended family or school connections. The progression from friends to gang members was a slow and often unintentional one, starting with shared habits like smoking and ditching school to more severe criminal activities. Despite this evolution, many members would deny their gang status, maintaining a facade of innocence. These street gangs showed a remarkable ability to adapt and connect, not just within states but across the nation. They formed alliances, became part of larger organizations, and some even developed connections with organized crime groups like Triads and Tongs. Such affiliations enabled these gangs to expand their criminal ventures, enhancing both their power and their reach. The non-territorial nature of these gangs led to a mobile and nomadic style of crime. Unlike traditional Western street gangs bound by territory, these groups roamed across states and even countries, living together, committing crimes, and establishing temporary headquarters or MO. In this world of violence, respect was paramount, especially personal respect. An insult could quickly escalate into a violent confrontation. Weapons, particularly semi-automatic firearms, became the great equalizers, chosen for their ability to overcome physical disadvantages. The proliferation of these gangs, with names like Natoma Boys, Tiny Rascals Gang, Black Dragons, and Triad Boys, has created a web that stretches across the state of California and beyond. The complexity, sophistication, and adaptability of these gangs make them a significant challenge for law enforcement, a phenomenon that transcends traditional boundaries, and a subject of continued study and concern. The story of these Southeast Asian street gangs is a tapestry woven from threads of history, culture, struggle, innovation, and survival. It is a testament to the human spirit's ability to adapt and evolve, even in the darkest of circumstances. But it also serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that the scars of the past can shape the future in unexpected and sometimes dangerous ways. Through the dimly lit streets of California's neighborhoods, the signs of Southeast Asian gang culture have left their indelible mark. A simple burn, a tattoo, a scar, these marks are more than mere physical manifestations, they are a profound statement of identity, commitment, and an intricate part of an ever-evolving subculture. The practice of self-inflicted burns originated among Southeast Asian gangs but transcended cultural boundaries to influence other street gangs, forging a bond that extended beyond ethnicity. It was not a mark of abuse, as some initially thought, but a declaration of courage and allegiance to the gang. In their eyes, the more burns you bear, the braver you are, the more fearless and committed to the gang's cause. But it wasn't just burns that adorned the bodies of these youths, scars too had their place. The process of scarification, although painful, held significant meaning, as did the act of tattooing, which saw a rise among Southeast Asian gang members post-1990. From panthers, dragons, eagles with outstretched talons, to the Vietnamese words for love, money, prison, crime, and revenge, these symbols were not merely decorative, they were part of a complex language. Tattoos like the 3 dots forming a triangle or the 5 dots arranged like the face of a die held specific meanings within the gang culture. The 5 T's were sometimes seen on Southeast Asian gang members who had done time, symbolizing their experience and the challenges they had overcome. But not all those who wore these marks were permanent gang members. Some were mercenary gang members, transient, driven by the allure of money, willing to ally themselves with any gang for a price. Cambodian gang members, on the other hand, were among the first to adopt Western street gang behaviors, including tattoos, nicknames, and attire. Their influence permeated other Southeast Asian gangs, and their openness to members of all ethnicities showed a progressive attitude toward gang culture. The Laotian and Hmong refugees, settling mostly in small cities, formed street gangs that often allied themselves with Cambodian street gangs. These alliances further enriched the complex tapestry of Southeast Asian gang culture. As we navigate these streets, we see a picture painted not only with the colors of ethnicity but also with the intricate patterns of tradition, adaptation, and fusion. The symbols may be universal, but the meaning is deeply personal, reflecting an individual's path, choices, and allegiance. These scars, burns, and tattoos are not just body art, they are badges of honor, a tangible representation of a way of life that extends far beyond the surface. It's a world where being down signifies a unique standing, a way of life that's embraced with pride, courage, and a readiness to face the unpredictable. The streets may appear calm now, but the echoes of this vivid subculture resonate in every burn, every scar, every tattoo, telling tales of a time that has left its mark not only on the bodies of those who lived it but also on the very fabric of society. In the dimly lit rooms of clandestine gatherings, the members of various Southeast Asian street gangs often discuss their exploits. Within these underground sanctuaries, honor, loyalty, and a strange blend of business ethics are cherished. Yet, a dark and brutal reality lurks beneath the surface, a world where violence is an accepted tool, where fear and intimidation reign supreme, and where secrets are guarded with zealous determination. The history of these gangs is complex and shaped by the cultural environment they sprang from. Many members have grown up in communities scarred by war and poverty, where survival sometimes meant breaking the rules. To understand them is to delve into the dichotomy of their existence. The planning and execution of the home invasion robberies are a testament to their adaptability, intelligence, and cold efficiency. The meticulous nature of these criminal acts reveals an understanding of human psychology, technology, and even law enforcement tactics. But it also reveals a ruthless disregard for humanity and a willingness to use terror as a means to an end. As you wander through the shadowy alleys of Southern California, you might chance upon the high-pitched wail of police sirens chasing after the thieves of the night. The dark secrets of the victims will remain hidden, the terror endured by families will remain unspoken, and the sheer audacity of the criminals will continue to haunt the communities they prey upon. In places like billiard halls and hidden cafes, alliances are forged and broken. The rivalries of street gangs are temporarily set aside for the allure of profit. Young men and women, driven by ambition or desperation, come together to share in the rewards of their criminal endeavors. But within this world, there is an unsettling normality in the use of violence. To some, it is a mere tool, a means to achieve an end, devoid of moral implications. A 16-year-old gang member's nonchalant attitude towards the victim's destiny echoes a troubling acceptance of fate's cruel whims. And in the shadows, the female associates play their roles, providing the deception required to breach the sanctity of homes and break the bonds of trust within communities. This chilling tale of Southeast Asian street gangs exposes a world that operates with a strange mixture of logic and brutality. Their activities reach far beyond simple theft and assault, encompassing a vast network of criminal activities that span extortion, burglary, drug trafficking, and more. As we move through the bustling streets of Los Angeles or the quiet suburban neighborhoods, the specter of these gangs lingers, an invisible force shaping lives and communities. The very characteristics that differentiate them from their Occidental counterparts make them formidable foes to law enforcement and chilling adversaries to their victims. The story of these gangs is more than a tale of criminal enterprise, it is a reflection of the multifaceted nature of human society, a tapestry woven with threads of culture, history, and individual choice. The complexity of their existence and the ambiguity of their motivations invite further examination, leading us deeper into the labyrinthine world they inhabit. Yet the story remains unfinished, and the questions linger: what drives these young men and women to choose this path? How do communities heal from the trauma inflicted? Where does the line between survival and immorality blur? As we ponder these questions, the gears of this underworld continue to turn, its secrets guarded, and its impact resonating beyond the headlines and police reports. The saga continues, hidden in plain sight, a constant reminder of the complexities and contradictions of human nature. In the bustling streets of a large Asian city, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow on the ever-moving crowd. People meandered through markets and alleys, unaware of the hidden world of crime that thrived in the shadows. In a dimly lit room filled with the hum of computers and machinery, members of a Southeast Asian street gang were engaged in their illicit trade. The room was a melting pot of old and new technologies, as the gang had adapted to the digital age. They were no longer limited to violence, they had branched into white-collar crimes, fraud, and high-end technical counterfeiting. Their story was one of evolution, a reflection of how gangs had moved with the times. Cellular telephone cloning. Once, they had thrived on cloning analog cellular telephones. A specialized device, a MINESN reader, had been their key to success, capturing and storing combinations specific to each cellular telephone. Cloning was lucrative, with cloned telephones sold on the streets. The gang had ridden this wave until digital technology made it obsolete. But they were survivors, innovators. Fraud and paper crimes. Paper fraud became their new specialty. Counterfeit checks, manufactured with ease through computers, flowed through their hands. A borrowed payroll check scanned, modified, and printed, all while a nameless gang associate waited to cash it at a local bank. The deception was layered, intricate, and highly profitable. Credit card fraud, identity theft, all were part of their repertoire. A laptop computer, a magnetic strip reader, and they were in business. Victims were left to grapple with ruined credit ratings, while the gang moved on to their next scheme. High-end technical counterfeit operations. But it was in the world of counterfeit movies, music, and software that they truly excelled. Their operation was sophisticated, hidden within legitimate manufacturing processes. Replicator machines worth millions were at the core of their business, producing thousands of copies of copyrighted material. Cloned versions of software systems, offered at enticing prices, were part of their daily trade. From stampers to automated printing machines, their investment was hefty, but the profits far outweighed the costs. The gray and black markets provided not just startup cash but a distribution network that was far-reaching. Human trafficking. Beyond the technological crimes, they also dabbled in human trafficking. The facilitators and transporters in a web that ensnared people, stripping them of dignity and freedom. A dark and hidden crime, but one that entangled them just as tightly as their other ventures. Their world was not just a tale of crime, it was a story of adaptation and resilience.
A reflection of how, as technology changed, so did they. They were a cohort that had moved from the analog age to the digital, from violent crime to the nonviolent. But at their core, they remained bound by a common thread, the relentless pursuit of power and profit, no matter the cost. Their story was a hidden chapter in the book of the city, waiting to be discovered by those who dared to look beyond the surface. It was a story not just of crime but of innovation, of a Darwinist nature that allowed them to survive and thrive in an ever-changing landscape. In the shadows of the bustling market, where the fragrance of spices mingled with the murmur of conversations, a single look could say more than 1,000 words. A mere glance, filled with intensity and purpose, was enough to instill fear, to silence a witness, or to intimidate a rival. It was known as the Mad Dog Stare, and within the Southeast Asian community, it carried a weight that few could fathom. It was a weapon wielded with precision, a nonverbal threat that spoke volumes. The street gangs of the Southeast Asian community were masters of this art. Their violent reputation had created a climate of fear, where revenge was always lurking in the shadows. A close-knit community that respected tradition found itself at the mercy of these gangs, where even the law could sometimes feel powerless.
Witness intimidation was seldom reported, but its effects were profound. Victims and witnesses would cease to cooperate with law enforcement, their voices silenced by a single glance.
It was a silent game of power, where understanding the culture and identifying these behaviors became crucial. But the story of Southeast Asian gangs was not just confined to the men. The narrative took an unexpected turn with the emergence of all-female street gangs. Female gangs. In a society where women's roles were traditionally subservient, the young women of Southeast Asia were forging a path of their own. Initially relegated to support roles, assisting male gang members, the frustration grew. Exposure to modern Western ideals fueled a desire for change, a longing for independence. All-female gangs began to form, each allied to a Southeast Asian male gang. They fought with rivals, asserting their place in the shadowy world of gang warfare. By the early 1980s, the existence of these female gangs was undeniable, and over time, they evolved, becoming independent, bold, and resourceful. Names like Wally Girls, Pomona Girls, Lady Rascals, Innocent Bitch Killers, and the Dirty Punks became symbols of a new era. These female gangs were no longer confined to secondary roles, they were now armed, involved in assaults, and trafficking narcotics. Their numbers grew, ranging from 20 to 50 members, ages 13 to 20. Some were recruited to carry weapons for male members or assist in robberies. Their presence was a testament to a changing landscape, a shift in the balance of power. It was a tale of transformation, of breaking free from the shackles of tradition. These women were not just adapting to the world of gangs, they were redefining it, carving out a place for themselves, challenging norms, and reshaping the narrative. The story of Southeast Asian gangs was complex, layered, filled with nuances. It was a story of intimidation and defiance, of tradition and rebellion, of men and women intertwined in a dance of power and survival. And in the heart of it all, the Mad Dog Stare continued to cast its spell, a silent reminder of a world where a single look could change the course of a life. It was a world hidden from view, yet pulsating with life, a world that thrived on the fringes, forever shaping and reshaping itself. In the intricate fabric of Southeast Asian community life, the presence of gangs weaves a distinct pattern, both apparent and concealed. Let me guide you through the layers of relationships and codes that form the very essence of Asian gang life. "I am not in a gang," says a youth, his eyes averted, his voice almost a whisper. The statement is not a lie, not to him. He's part of a friendship that has grown, blossomed, and mutated into something darker and more complex. He's on a journey that started with shared laughter, a common love for music, and small rebellious acts. The transformation is insidious, subtle. Friends become family. Bonds are fortified through shared secrets, loyalty, and a growing fascination with power and respect. A fight at school, a brush with the law, petty thefts all seem transient, part of growing up. But they linger, the echoes of these acts forming a symphony that plays in the background of their lives. A gang is born not with grand ceremonies but with the crossing of an invisible line. That line is criminal activity. In the world of Southeast Asian gangs, hierarchy and dynamics are fluid.
A young woman, perhaps viewed traditionally as subservient in her culture, rises in the ranks, becomes independent, fierce. She may join an all-female street gang, initially aligning herself with male gangs but soon carving a path of her own. Her gang's name echoes through the alleys: Wally Girls, Lady Rascals, Innocent Bitch Killers, names that inspire fear, respect, and sometimes, a twisted admiration. Tattoos and monikers may not mark the members. What binds them are the unspoken rules, the understanding of a look, a mad dog stare, that can intimidate even the bravest of souls. Law enforcement struggles, often baffled by this silent language of intimidation and unity. Older gang members, or die low, older brothers, become mentors, inspiring younger members who look up to them with reverence. The dichotomy is startling: a high-achieving student by day, a ruthless gang member by night. Affluence doesn't deter them, cultural ties and friendships blur the lines between right and wrong. Rivalries ignite, sometimes over love, music, or drugs. A spark, an event can set off a fire that engulfs entire neighborhoods. The escalation is rapid, the violence brutal, and the unity even more robust. Parents may deny the existence of gangs, clinging to the accomplishments of their children, unaware of the shadows that linger just out of their sight. The community may turn a blind eye, fearful of reprisals, their silence feeding the very monster they wish to avoid. Gangs move, grow, evolve. They are not static entities but living organisms that adapt to new environments, new members, new challenges. And at the heart of it all, a paradox: the denial of being in a gang while embodying everything that defines it. The denial is not just a facade, it's a belief, a lifestyle, a complex tapestry woven from threads of friendship, culture, rebellion, and survival. The young man's voice haunts the listener long after he is left. I did not realize I was in a gang until it was too late. Too late, indeed. The path has been taken, the line crossed, and the identity assumed, even if unspoken. Asian street gangs are not just a phenomenon, they are a reflection of society's complex layers, a mirror showing us the convoluted human condition, bound by the unbreakable chains of culture, friendship, and a never-ending quest for power and respect. As the sun dipped low in the horizon, the shadows of the urban streets began to lengthen, blending with the aura of secrecy and subterfuge that characterized the world of Asian street gangs in America. The years had transformed these gangs, taking them from their rugged origins in the 1980s into a new era of sophistication, ambition, and criminal innovation. The younger generations, born and bred on American soil, had learned the art of concealment. Gone were the glaring symbols of gang affiliation, replaced with an awareness of police tactics and an insidious denial of membership. Even as they thrived along the West Coast, whispers of their expansion had reached the bustling streets of New York. Among the elders, the aging warriors who had tasted the grit of street battles and survived, a transformation was also taking place. Their hands, once skilled with the handling of firearms and blades, now danced over keyboards and counterfeit machines. The sound of gunfire had faded, replaced by the silent hum of printers producing fraudulent documents and counterfeit products. Their once fierce rivalries had given way to alliances, united by the pursuit of profit. With technology at their fingertips, a new frontier had opened for these Asian gangs. The World Wide Web, once an instrument of knowledge and connection, had become a haven for criminal endeavors. Websites dedicated to the gang's history and photographs were a blend of audacity and tribute, a virtual monument to their evolution. These gangs had found their way into non-violent financial crime, exploiting the digital age's opportunities. They delved into counterfeit CDs, traveler's checks, computer software, and even the gray markets, selling fraudulent cigarettes and other goods. The gang members had become craftsmen in deceit, forging connections from coast to coast. In the darkened rooms of those who sought to understand and combat these gangs, a realization was dawning. The street battles, the tattoos, and the loud declarations of allegiance were fading echoes of the past. A new era had dawned, one where the lines between gang members and legitimate businesspeople were blurred, where violence had been supplanted by cunning and innovation. The gangs had changed, but the core of their existence remained unaltered. They were still bound by the desire to make money, to gain respect, to save face, and to have fun. They still lived by a code, hidden behind the veneer of modernity, guided by the age-old principles of loyalty and survival. As night fell and the city's heartbeat slowed,
the world of the Southeast Asian street gangs continued to thrive, unseen but ever present. Their evolution was a testament to their resilience, a dance with darkness that promised to endure as long as there were opportunities to seize and shadows in which to hide. The game had changed, but the players were still very much in play, adapting, growing, and waiting for the next opportunity to strike. The secret societies of the East, veiled in mystique and tradition, have walked the tightrope between myth and reality, and nowhere has this been more prominent than in the story of the Chinese Triads. From political action groups to criminal cartels, the Triads have been a force that has shaped the course of history, politics, and crime, not only in China but around the globe. In the hushed corners of the ancient Shantung province, the precursor to modern-day Triads was born. The Red Eyebrows, a group marked by their rouged brows, paved the way for an organization that would become the first political action group of its kind. Over the centuries, the Triads have evolved, their roots reaching deep into the fabric of Chinese society. The Triad symbol, a triangle, represented the harmonious unity of heaven, earth, and man. They were the torchbearers of the Blood Brotherhood, a secret alliance bound by oaths and rituals, and driven by a patriotic mission to restore the Chinese as the rulers of China. Torture and death awaited those who were discovered, and thus, a strict code of secrecy became the cornerstone of the Triads. Fear and mysticism swirled around the Triads, giving them an aura of power that allowed them to infiltrate and influence the very echelons of Chinese leadership. But as they grew in influence, the Triads also attracted persecution, leading to a constant ebb and flow of power, control, and survival. In the hustle and bustle of modern-day Hong Kong, the Triads continue to thrive. Their hands reach into the dark corners of opium smuggling, prostitution, protection rackets, and the heroin production of Southeast Asia. Their structure, devoid of a singular godfather figure, is both their strength and enigma, allowing them to operate independently yet maintain a cohesive force. But the Triads are not alone. Alongside them are the Tongs, organizations born from Chinese working groups in America. They began as support networks for immigrant Chinese workers, but over time, some Tongs were seduced by criminality, forging connections with the Triads and playing an active role in organized crime. The release of Hong Kong from British authority in 1997 sent ripples through the criminal underworld, leading to a feared exodus of Chinese criminals, including members of the Triads and Tongs, into the United States. The street gangs became recruitment pools, and the dance between organized crime and street-level criminality continued to intertwine. As the world turned its eyes towards the glittering skyline of Hong Kong, the shadowy tale of the Triads and Tongs unfolded in silence. Their initiation rituals, secret handshakes, numerology, and religious overtones formed bonds of loyalty that transcended mere criminal association. In the streets of San Francisco, Chicago, and other cities, the legacy of these organizations found echoes in street gangs like the Huaqing, Ghost Shadows, and United Bamboo. The Tongs, in their quest for control, had even attempted to manipulate these gangs, using them as muscle, further blurring the line between the world of street gangs and organized crime. The Triads and Tongs were more than mere criminal syndicates. They were an embodiment of tradition, a reflection of a complex and layered history, and a symbol of the unbreakable bonds that could unite men in a cause, whether noble or nefarious. Their tale is a reminder that crime, power, and loyalty are not confined to the borders of nations or the pages of history books. They are alive, evolving, and continue to shape our world in ways that are often hidden from view but leave an indelible mark on the tapestry of human existence. In the dark alleyways, beneath the neon signs, the Triads and Tongs are still there, an enigmatic presence that continues to redefine the very nature of organized crime, a dance with shadows that never truly ends. In the labyrinthine underworld of the Japanese crime syndicate, the Yakuza occupies a place of notoriety and myth, a mixture of traditional values and brazen criminality. Their story is one that ripples across the landscape of Japan, a world where honor mingles with violence, and ceremony interweaves with transgressions. The Yakuza, unlike many criminal organizations, are enmeshed in a complex social fabric. With their Robin Hood image of old, they once commanded a sort of respect, even though their activities span the morally dubious realms of gambling, prostitution, and extortion. However, a shift in their methodology, targeting ordinary citizens, altered the public's perception. These violent ones bear a distinct visual culture. Their tattooed bodies tell stories, not only of personal history but also of group allegiances. snakes, dragons, and mythical figures dance upon their skin, expressions of commitment and courage.
The pain, endured through days of meticulous artistry with bamboo needles, becomes a test of loyalty.
Every wince is a step toward deeper allegiance to their cause.
Perhaps, one of the most startling aspects of Yakuza's existence lies in their rituals. Ubisum, a ceremony of atonement, symbolizes their strict code of honor.
A simple mistake can cost a member the top digit of his little finger, a physical manifestation of regret and plea for forgiveness.
Yakuza's influence isn't confined to the borders of Japan. Their reach extends into the United States, a place for weapons acquisition, investment, and the manipulation of the tourist industry.
The expansion reflects a growing ambition, and with it, an increase in criminal activity.
The syndicate is far from monolithic.
Among the Japanese street gangs, the big three, Yamaguchi-gumi, Sumiyoshi-kai, and Inagawa-kai, loom large. Their rivalries have shaped the underworld landscape, with bloody wars and power struggles. These gangs have rich histories. The Yamaguchi-gumi, the largest of them, has thrived under police suppression. Sumiyoshi-kai, with its roots around Tokyo, has expanded under the leadership of Shigeo Nishiguchi. Inagawa-kai, though smaller, became notorious due to its connections with political figures. The battles between these gangs have sometimes assumed epic proportions, like the one between the Aoyama-kai gang and the Mitani-kumi-led groups in 1925, which necessitated the declaration of martial law. Or the covert operation that led to the murder of Susumu Wakasada, one of the Ichiwa-kai leaders, in a plot involving cross-dressing and cold-blooded execution. Laws and regulations have been enacted to curb the growth of these gangs, but as in other parts of the world, the violence continues.
The story of the Yakuza is a continuing saga, an exploration of the darker corners of human behavior, and a window into a world where tradition and crime intertwine in an uneasy dance.
The curtain falls on a complex and intricate tapestry of Asian street gangs, revealing the multi-layered nature of what is often simplified under the umbrella term Asian. Stretching across various countries and cultures, these criminal enterprises have evolved and adapted, reflecting both Eastern and Western influences in their structure, activities, and appearance. The diaspora of Asian street gangs extends from the streets of Japan, China, Korea, and Southeast Asia to the distant lands of the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Unlike their Latino counterparts, they are nomadic, with their existence defined not by territory but by a relentless pursuit of profit. There are distinctions and exceptions within these gangs, with some adhering to a well-defined leadership while others reject any formal hierarchy.
Some follow the strict code of loyalty, expressed through tattoos and self-mutilations, whereas others embrace a more fluid and westernized identity.
Violence is an unfortunate but essential tool within their repertoire, often used to instill fear, extract information, or suppress dissent. There's a growing inclination towards non-violent criminal activities as well, such as fraud and piracy, reflecting a desire for profits without the bloodshed.
The criminal sophistication of Asian gangs often surpasses that of Western street gangs, revealing careful planning and execution.
But this complexity is often hidden behind the walls of language barriers and cultural mistrust, making the issue all the more elusive for law enforcement. These gangs victimize their communities, and with the recent growth into white-collar criminal activity, their impact could extend further into the fabric of society. The intricate social customs and cultural biases within Asian communities also influence gang membership and parental interactions. As we conclude, let us recognize that the term Asian in the context of street gangs and organized crime groups is a mosaic of different cultures, behaviors, and ideologies. It's a narrative that continues to unfold, adapting to the changing tides of society, both Eastern and Western, with implications that reverberate across communities, nations, and generations. The exploration of Asian street gangs paints a portrait not only of crime but of human complexity, cultural diversity, and the intricate dance between tradition and modernity. It is a chapter in a broader story that challenges our understanding and asks us to look deeper, to see the nuance behind the labels, the stories behind the stereotypes, and the individuals behind the images.